All right, welcome to the Sesh. We are here live with our panel and our guests. This is our third episode for the Sesh that's presented by Corn-Fed Coaching Podcast. My name is Damian Corriere. I'm your host. Today, I'm very excited to have a fantastic guest with us. I know for me, when I think of coaching education in the soccer world, I think of United Soccer Club or United Soccer Coaches. And I think when everyone thinks of United Soccer Coaches, we think of Ian Barker. So today we are privileged to have Ian Barker on the show. Ian is going to be going through and taking us through kind of how he goes about a training session on a specific topic. And we're going to watch him talk about his methodologies and how he develops things and have a concrete session to take with us when we're done today. Obviously, you're able to see on your screen Ian's resume is very impressive. And so please do take a look at that. And Ian, you're with us today. You're on the call. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Kansas City, Missouri. We're pretty safe, and the weather's nice, and looking forward to a longer weekend.
Good. How have the last 3-4 months been for you guys?
We closed the office on March the 17th, and since then, Vince Gansberg, my colleague, and I have probably been busier, albeit from our desks and offices, creating online content live and for later consumption. So we've put out over 120 little mini webinars, little pop-up webinars. We've rewritten the curriculum for our advanced courses and also created an additional format. So in addition to the residential and the 2 weekend, we've created the course largely online with a modest amount of in-person to honor physical distancing when we get back. So we've been pretty busy.
That's awesome. That's really good to hear. I've been through kind of the pathway with United Soccer, and so I'm excited if there's some new stuff for me to do in the future. So I'll introduce the panel to you, Ian. I think you know everyone that's on it, but we'll get it out for the viewers and for everyone else just to get the information. So once again, we do have Adrian Parrish on, and we got another screen share going on there. We got Adrian Parrish, who's from FC Cincinnati. And we have Ross Moffitt, who is from Iowa Soccer. And then we obviously have the Corn-Fed Coaching podcast guys, Jack Andrews and John Shota on the call. So they'll be the panel, and we will go through and kind of ask questions when we have. So real quick before we get going, third episode. So like we did last time out, looking for everyone's favorite player that wore the number 3 jersey.
Go on then, I'll go first this time. And Stuart Pearce.
Who's next?
I'll go. I'm going to take Ashley Cole. He wore 3, right?
Yeah, I would take Ashley Cole as well, Ross.
Oh, come on.
Sorry, that was me.
I can think of a couple really good ones still that have not been snatched up, though.
Was there a 3 and is there a Scottish 3 at all?
Andy Robertson, I don't think.
I was going to say, does he wear the 3 for Scotland?
I don't think so.
He didn't look. I'll tell you what. Last night he didn't look like a very good number 3.
Shota, you're on? No?
He's on mute.
We'll come back to Shota.
I'm on.
Well, I'm gonna if you don't want, if it's got to be actually the number 3 and not A3, because if you're gonna have A3, you'd probably have somebody like Roberto Carlos or maybe Marcelo currently. But Lilian Thuram, he wouldn't have been bad. Lizarazu, he wouldn't have been bad. But then obviously there was Cohen that won the World Cup for England in 1966. He would have worn 3. And there's a couple from my era. Mick Mills, ex of Ipswich, he would have been wearing 3. And then a very famous player from Crystal Palace and Arsenal called Kenny Sampson, who actually just sadly passed away during the COVID period. But Kenny Sampson, England and Crystal Palace and Arsenal. I'll go with Kenny Sampson.
Boys, you know we're under pressure when Ian is going back to games from 1966. We're under a lot of pressure here today, boys. As a panel.
Google search some of those names. Very easy for me growing up as an Italian American kid. Chiellini or Maldini. would be 2 picks for me. So that's that. All right, so Ian, your topic that you picked was rondos. You wanted to do a training session or develop some activities that were rondo based. So the question for us as a panel would be, the first one is for you to define in your mind what is a rondo. So what defines an activity? What makes an activity to you a rondo?
Well, just before I answer that, I'll just comment that this group of activities I presented at the convention in 2019, not as a progressive session, but as 6 activities. And it was in response to a lot of stuff in social media where people were saying you must always do rondos or you must never do rondos. And in it, as Adrian will appreciate, and Ross particularly in coach education right now, there are people that will always tell you you must always start with play, practice, play, or you must always start with. And it just seems to me that those always and never propositions are false. So the session was done to suggest rondos they're a great thing if you want to use them. You don't have to, but here's some ways to do it. And then people were chippering away about rondos, and I really, to your question, Damien, I wasn't really sure what they were. So I kind of looked it up, couldn't find an answer. But then the common theme for me was essentially any kind of keep away type activity is a rondo. Doesn't necessarily require direction, doesn't necessarily require boundaries, but it's one group's got the ball and one group's trying to get it away from them. And there's probably a numerical advantage to the group that has the ball. That's pretty much what a rondo is to me.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we figured, but we did, have questions about that, just looking at some of this stuff. So I'll let you in if you want to head to your first activity that you want to show us. And
yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where, why did a keep away become a rondo? Maybe because it sells more books, but at the end of the day, I don't think there's a lot of difference between keep away, which we were all doing, we've been doing for donkey's years. So let's see if we can get this screen to advance for me. Okay, there we go. So this was the first activity I showed at the convention. And within 2 minutes, somebody had tweeted out, "This sucks. Why did I pay money to come and watch this?" Didn't really give me the benefit of the additional 58 minutes to come. But anywhere you go in the world, either led by the coach or just by the players picking up, they'll get into some type of activity like this, which is just keep away, big group, 2 in the middle. The cones I've put in the kids' hands there, they would basically be, if you were doing this with a youth team, how you identify who's in the middle. So if they change in and out, they hand the cone over, or they're holding onto a scrimmage vest. A lot of coaches will put the 2 kids in scrimmage vests, and when they turn over, the whole training stops while they change again. So just a quick way of turning them over. Obviously, splitting them is ideal. And one of the highlights of this type of training, if you can back off as the coach, is you want them to start talking a little bit of smack and having some fun, because you don't want to be in the middle and you want to be improving the quality of play around the outside. Some things we did, because I had Chicago Fire players, we went to a nice rhythm where it's 2 touch, but as soon as somebody needs to play 1 touch, you have to stay in 1 touch for that entire time. Another little opportunity would be, I don't know if you can see my mouse. So if the ball is going across the grid to this kid at the top here, she can't pass it immediately to her left or right. But these kids immediately to her left and the right, they could come out and switch with another player. So she can't play it to the 2 kids. And so what you get now is, as you're playing a rondo, you get 3 or 4 different kids moving off the ball. And then obviously another nice touch is if you've got those number 10, 360-degree type players, maybe you pop one in the middle of the session. And so they're trying to split the 2 defenders, but they're also trying to bounce in off of a kid in the middle. So although this is, whatever that is, 8, 9 versus 2 keep away, there are variations you can keep building into this for a 10-minute warm-up, which I think would be a high physical and cognitive activation for the kids.
Okay. So you did talk about, there is, for you, a social component to this activity as well.
Yeah, I mean, it can be pretty brutal when you watch high-level players do it, and you can Google examples where they're no-look passing. And obviously, you got to think about the social composition of your group, how much you want to bury the 2 kids in the middle. But if you've got a pretty spunky group, not getting out of the middle is important, and being slick with your touches around the outside is important too. So I like it for there's a degree of challenge you can put in there at a social level. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Ian, I have a question on top of that, because I think anyone that's played the game has probably participated in this type of rondo. I would even put out there to say 98% of coaches have done this rondo before, and try to get kids to do it on their own. What's your thoughts if you're trying to get banter going and trying to get, you got a good group? What's the thoughts of coaches even jumping in this type of thing to start off with as a rondo?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think if you've got a pretty young group that's maybe needs a little bit of help firing up, you go in the middle. And obviously, you're not going to go through a kid or necessarily intercept it, but you can sort of apply pressure and you can raise the energy of it and start it going. So, yeah, absolutely. And then obviously, your college team, many of us that have coached college will join in this at the beginning because it's fun for us too. And of course, the kids love to get you in the middle. So you very often get you get the guys on the outside purposely screwing the coach as well. So, yeah, absolutely.
Ian, I'm wary of opening the coach education can of worms, but this is the sesh, and this is where we ask the big questions. So I think, in the coach education realm, you probably get the suggestion that there's no direction here. So, therefore, is it game realistic, etc. So would you speak to how a multi-directional game or a 360 or whatever you want to call it, how that is still applicable to the game?
Yeah, I mean, certainly you could make the case that, if you really wanted to make it into a functional level, the kids on the outside are essentially sort of midfielders, right? Because they're not stuck on one side of a grid or the other. They've got at least the better part of 180 degrees to play into. And if you do pop a kid into the center of the grid, then you're really developing the skills for number 10. We've certainly seen people use the 2 or 3 kids in the middle to work on pressing and communicating on a defensive point of view and not getting split. So I think there's enough functionality in this. And if you get into that idea of them exchanging positions too, because they can't, you deny them the pass to left or right, you've got interchange and movement off the ball, which is going to apply anywhere on the field. Other things too, grassroots coaches, obviously squares, triangles, no boundaries, but this fits in a center circle, right? So if you've got your whole squad, you don't need to set anything up. You just go in the center circle and build from there.
Yeah.
It definitely took care of one question too, was about maybe coaching the defending team within this activity. What types of different transitions do you have for the 2 or 3 players in the middle that are trying to win the ball?
Yeah, I like it. Obviously, if you've got a touch condition, as soon as a kid takes multiple touches, they exchange on the fly. I like it to exchange on the fly, so I don't like the coach having to stop it. And that's why I don't want them wearing scrimmage vests. I want them holding them or holding a cone. It could be a touch. It could be the defender kicks it out of bounds, but ultimately you'd like the 2 defenders to actually regain possession. Once they've got possession, I think that's pretty much it. You don't need to have them complete X number of passes. But a meaningful touch, a dispossession touch, as opposed to just sort of it glancing off their foot. So force the guys on the outside to actually lose control or intercept it. That would be my 2 primary ones.
And then in an activity like this, so if you were going to do this for your warm up, so I would do something like this for me, maybe as I've got like an older team, I might have them do this on their own time, kind of as I'm maybe showing up to a training session and struggling to get set up because I'm tight for time. So that's a way for them to socialize and get some stuff in. But if you were going to do this as your activity, what would be any considerations you had as far as the amount of time you would put towards it and periodization for the activity?
Yeah, good question. So many times I've let my college teams warm up like this, and it's basically pretty low energy. It's not really particularly related to the rest of my session. If I want to make this build into my session, then I've got to get in and help manage it. I've got to make sure the touches are there. I've got to make sure they're exchanging positions. So it could just literally be used for the coach to get his or her surf together while the kids are just distracted. But I do think it can be a meaningful part of training. And then, this is one of the things about periodization, right? if you've only got one ball there, then it'll be a modest intensity level. If you've got a stack of balls, and as soon as that ball's lost, you just pull another ball in, or the coach fires another ball in, you can do it for 2 minutes with one ball and get X amount of work, and do it for 2 minutes with a ball in all the time and get 10 times the amount of work. So it's not a question of how much time, it's a question of how much intensity relative to the supply of balls and the technical level of the players. But if I was managing this, a 2-minute set, maybe 3 of them is a 10-minute elapsed, and that's my warm-up, and I'd be quite happy with that.
Okay, so 10 minutes, that's pretty good.
And of course, surface could be a big part of this too, right? Because if you're in a parquet floor in an indoor space, it's pinging around. And if you're in a meadow with grass over the kids' ankles, the ball isn't really rolling. So surface can be part of it too.
So Chota down there laughing a little bit about the grass. Seen some of your online videos from the summertime. It's getting a little long out there. Does anyone else have anything on this before? For Ian, we could probably have
a bunch of questions, Damo, but I think it probably makes more sense to just keep. I think the questions are going to be applicable to most of the Rondo variations. So maybe let's move on to the next.
Yeah, I think because I know we've cheated a little and seen some of the sessions or the activities that Ian sent across. So I'm interested to get into Ian's thoughts as well eventually about positional rondos. So I think some of those come out a little bit further in his activities. So
yeah.
And then this one, obviously, there is the implication for practicing physical distancing with this. So if you put some cones down around the circle and ask the kids to stay in that gate, and then the possession players move slightly away from the edge of the circle, you could actually adapt it for some physical distancing depending on what stage of return to play you're at. So this isn't really significantly different, except it becomes a little bit competitive. You potentially add in a little conditioning component of it, and you can make it a little bit more team oriented. So basically, you set up 2 Rondo games with 5v1 in this case, but it could be a 5v2, 4v2. You could obviously have more than one defender. And simply put, if I look at the top of the screen, the white kid is leaving because he at some point dispossessed or won it. So now he's out. So he sprints across, tags one of his teammates in, and now you get a different defender. So there's an incentive as the defender to get the hell out of there quickly because you get to rejoin your team. The quicker we go across the grid when we've got out, or the quicker we run across to get back in as the defender, we'll stop the 5 passing around unlimited. So if it's first team to complete 20 passes, you've defended it, you've left, but now you want to get your buddy back there to defend it. And then probably the single biggest weakness about this activity when you start it is when the defender leaves, the 5 blues at the top here just look at each other. So the coach has to remind them, okay, now get in a nice one-touch rhythm, find your shape again, whatever it is. And actually, down here, you'll see on the notes, I put coaches keep the balls in supply. So this, to your point, Damien, if they've got a bunch of balls, this never stops, right? This is action. So this might only be, again, 90 seconds, 2 minutes. Then you have a quick drink. Maybe you add in a couple of technical pieces. This diagrammer is quick tactics. So the white kids in the bottom, you can see how they've got their feet open like a book. So that would be a technical thing we might talk about, is being open hips-wise and body-wise. And if you've got a decent lesson planner like quick tactics, you can actually show some of those physical orientations as well.
I love the way, Ian, that you've added an extra layer of sort of, I don't want to say chaos, but definitely unpredictability. And could you speak to the importance of that versus, maybe like a passing pattern or a more just a kind of technical centric isolated exercise?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and kind of an observation with the previous activity in this. It's not about getting 501 great activities. It's being able to find a decent activity, which I think this is. And then I think the experienced coach is the one that has 20 variations that he or she can adjust in. Vary the balls, vary the number of touches, add defenders, reduce defenders, change the distance, change the shape of the activity. But right off the bat, this becomes a team, right? So the whites are trying to execute a number of passes or disrupt a number of the actions. So let's say the first thing is everybody's got to be a defender once. So whilst you're possessing down the other end to stop their defender turning over, you're working really hard to defend at the top. So you could actually put the emphasis on winning by being effective at defending and also effective at possession. So it's always about the way you sell it to the kids. If you did this and you were a grassroots coach and you simply get the lesson plan, you do it on Tuesday, they're not going to let you do it on Thursday because you haven't found enough spice in it. So again, can you adapt and make these activities more interesting? And of course, improve the degree of challenge after a while as well.
So Ian, a little bit on the defender. Obviously, at the level that we're here, or I'm at here with FC Cincinnati Academy kids, they'll manage themselves as who's going to be the defender. All right, they manage themselves of knowing also to some degree of their periodization of like saying, hey, I've gone as hard as I can for 20 seconds. I haven't won the ball. We'll switch it over. You've got your diagram here with two coaches. All right. You know, maybe a coach doesn't do it. What's your thoughts on that? As like, if you can just go through the ideas, maybe of different levels, different ages of how the defender might be managed within this activity.
Yeah, it's a great question, right? So you want the kids to feel challenged, and you'd like groups to have the opportunity for success, right? So if you're working with the 5, then maybe the defender is in for 20 seconds and then you change him because he or she's probably not going to win it. So you don't flog them. You just let the defender run around for 20 seconds because you're really trying to give the 5 success. If you want to give the defenders success, maybe you start with 2 or 3 in the grid. And after a while, you say, hey, you guys are killing it. We're going to reduce the defender. We're going to give you an extra possession player, and we're going to reduce the number of defenders. So I do think this is where the coach keeps his or her mouth shut to the best of their ability, but is just making subtle little changes in, again, almost selling it to the kids. Where's the incentive? Why, you know, if the one kid in the middle is in there for 3.5 minutes and doesn't touch it, he has a right or she has a right to turn around and look at you and say, what is the point? So if you put them in that overstress situation, then you put it on a clock, right? Work as hard as you can for 15 seconds, and then you can call anybody of your mates out. So let's say this kid, he did his 20-second shift, and now he gets to call one of his mates in for a 20-second shift. So now he's having some fun with who he gets to pick on from his own team. So I think, again, there are always ways to sell it, but it comes, as you know, Adrian, it comes with experience, right? First of all, the guy in the tracksuit here, you got to be comfortable in your skin. And you've got to be comfortable standing there with your arms crossed, letting the kids have fun. And then you've got to be ready on the bottom to step in when they've lost energy and they've lost enthusiasm.
Yeah, and I think, again, this is why it kind of went through with this question here, because it's going to depend on your level as a coach, and not just that, is your level of your players that you're working with. And I think this is one of the wonderful things of these activities. And one of the things we always talk about is, like, when we talk about curriculum, it's more like curriculum support. This is a support. But then the coaches, the idea is how you adapt it. You know, we don't want you to come out and say, hey, copy this, follow this, because you're not going to be working with, like I am here with future pro players, you know, so it's a little bit different, and how coaches have to read this and now they have to adapt. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, I'll say this. It's a little bit controversial maybe, but I consider all of the people listening to the show experts because they know their environment, right? They know
100%.
So all this is a great training game that I use, and I can make it look really, really good because I've got tons of experience. It's failed as many times as it's worked, and I've worked with boys and girls of all ages from under 6 up to pros, essentially. So that the reason I can make it potentially really good is because I'm experienced. However, if I walk into a VSA training right off the bat and I've never met the kids, it's not going to look any better than the VSA coach. So This is not about, sage on the stage. It's not about expertise of an individual. It's about expertise within your environment.
Yeah.
And is this an activity that you would kind of, I know you kind of said sit back with your arms crossed, but are you doing any coaching in here at any point in time? Are you hitting on any technical points? Maybe not stopping, but maybe individually working with players at all?
Yeah. So again, very good question. Both of these activities, the first one and this one, I would consider first activities on a progressive training session. I don't think they're advanced enough to be in the second part of training. So these are your activation activities. The first thing I'm going to do is put them in the environment and let them go through it, right? Because it's not going to look great at the start. Never does, because they're just trying to work out how it works. So put them in it, let them play for a little bit. Then the first thing I'm probably going to have to adjust to Adrian's point is try to get the energy up and the enthusiasm and the competition. If I've got a group of really spunky kids that know each other, they've been together for years, maybe I don't have to do that. But very often, after you've set it up and let them go through it, you have to then inject a little bit of oomph. And then once I've got it going, okay, what does the first touch look like? Does the first touch prepare you for the second touch? Are you getting your head up to look for the next pass as the ball is traveling? If you're defending, what is your angle of approach to the ball? Are you trying to take that 5v1 and make it a 4v1 and a 3v1 and maybe a 2v1? So the coaching for me comes in after I've got it flowing, after I've got it at a level I can manage, and then I can see some of the challenges. If I tell them all about this activity, tell them all the things they've got to be good at, and then put them in it, that's absolutely the wrong way to go about it.
Okay.
I think that's a powerful message, Ian. It probably seems obvious to you now after all your years of coaching and experience, but I think what we see at the grassroots level a lot, and for the people tuning in, is we get so excited to regurgitate coaching points and give information, and before we've even had a look at the environment, and before we've really set a tone, and you're talking about making sure there's tempo and rhythm before you start trying to teach. And a few minutes ago, you even talked about some ways to kind of manipulate the environment without providing information, but just, changing the number of balls or how the balls are inserted or the dimension. All of those things can, in a way, be a teacher before we start trying to insert ourselves as coaches. So really cool to hear you talk about that, because I think that's something we see a lot at the grassroots level, is that eagerness to get in there and teach and be the center of attention. And it really doesn't need to be, particularly at this point in a progressive training session.
Yeah. And the experience thing is interesting. So, to the beginning coaches listening to the sesh, don't be intimidated by the notion of experience. So we've all run into parents who've said to us, you've made the wrong selection at tryouts, and I know because I've been watching soccer for 5 years. Chances are they've been watching the same thing for 5 years, which is their own son or daughter, right? We as coaches, if we just watch the activity the same way every time, then we're stuck in the mud. The experience comes from failure and being prepared to accept the failure and then tweak the activity. So it's that deliberate reflection and deliberate feedback that you give yourself and say, that didn't work today. Why didn't it work? And then you can go back. So experience is just simply, it's not just time. It is also, intentional time for sure.
And I've failed a lot. I should be better.
Yeah, you really should be.
So I really liked your next activity, which I think was it like a 5v3? Oh, okay. We got one in between. Yeah, so we'll go to the other one first, though. But yeah.
Yeah. So this one, most of the coaches have probably done something like this, but I kind of like this one. In the left, it's a 4 versus 2, and everybody's inside the rectangle, and you're working obviously on trying to split the 2 defenders. And so the things I'd be talking about is the player on the ball needs immediate support to his or her left, immediate support to his or her right, and then the split or downtown option. So as the ball moves, the responsibility of the 4 players in possession will always change. You're either supporting left and right, you have the downtown split pass, or you've got the ball. And that's perfectly good. We've done tons of 4v2s. How do the two get out the middle? You come up with your own routines. Maybe every time they intercept it, they get a point or a life, and they keep playing. And then you've got another group of 4 reds and 2 whites playing, and you can do many things. I do think a rectangle sometimes is a bit limiting because kids will sit in the corners. And you can see here, I've suggested by the movement of the kid in white on the lower left, that as the pressure is coming, his angle of support has got to change. He's got to get closer. But obviously, if the 2 reds don't pressure, he can just stand on the cone and get it. So you've got to make it realistic, right? Kids will often try to help their teammate by getting too close to them. I like 4 versus 2, but I like this added emphasis of every time the ball moves, you've got a new job. And then if we take it over here to a different way of playing it, now they're a triangle, so some different angles, but the 3 blues are on the outside and the white is in the middle by his or herself. And now the game activity is every ball must go through the triangle as part of the game, right? Because obviously if it goes around the edge, the white has no chance. So this is just a nice example of triangle over square, 3v1 over 4v2, and then either the rondo is all-inclusive or you got half out and half in. And I think it gives you some nice ways of varying and changing the training.
So, Ian, on this one, you've come up with a couple of points there. And I think, as coaches, we come up with our own terminology, which, we hope that players go from like either small-sided activities like a keep away or a rondo, or as we go in. One of the things I always say to the kids, but especially in these type 4 versus 2, 3 versus 1, hey, ball moves, you move. Because we start working at angles, start talking about different things, and we hope that moves on. What are some of the things that you've used that you think have registered with players? I just know you talked about angles, going close, that you found very useful in groups that you've worked with. So.
Well, yeah, I think the you move, ball moves, you move makes a ton of sense, right? So I think every young player can appreciate the ball is relevant, your teammates is relevant, the opponents are relevant, and the boundaries are relevant. So as soon as one of those things change, something else has probably got to change, right? If the pressure is greater, then the support has to change. So I think that those types of simple but incredibly important sort of understandings can start in at the 6 and 8 year olds, and they're obviously more mature at 10 and 12. I think a language, right? So maybe talking about penetration, support, cover, balance is great for coaches, but it's not particularly useful to kids. So over here, I'm talking to the kid to the left and right of the player in possession in white. How can you help him? That's it. How can you help him? You could help him by talking to him. You could help him by shifting your position. What are we trying to do? We're trying to hit the split pass, the downtown pass. Every time we do that, we've got to yell Olay. And after a while, once you've got your group going, they know that Olay means success. And now the defender knows, oh, I got Olayed. I don't want to get Olayed. So I think it is a meta language that you form for your kids, and then you talk it up a little bit, right? So you make it private and personal to this group. This is the way we do it in Kentucky ODP. This is the VSA. Still the same game as the one that Ross is doing across the street, but it's just more private to you.
Sure.
Ian, I know you had in your document that you sent me, you had 12 plus, 12U plus for these activities. And what age could you really start these? Could you start these, or would you start these at an earlier age than 12?
Yeah.
I know environments matter a little bit there, but.
Yeah. No, I think we obviously as coaches, especially less experienced, we get hung up on, is it ability based? So the Cincinnati MLS kids at 10 could do this, but the Ohio South ODP could not because they're a lower physical level. Or is it based on chronological age? Is it based on physical abilities? So there's more than one way of determining readiness. However, I think if we're asking under 9s and 10s to play 7-a-side, then they should be able to. They need to be able to do some of these activities to some degree of competence. So I think it's an 8 under 9 under 10 type thing, and where it should be pretty refined, where they can play for sustained periods of time and understand the concepts, would probably be more in that under 12, under 11 as they're developing into niner side. Respectfully, somebody's going to get on the session, tell you that their 6-year-olds can do it and 8-year-olds can do it. God bless them. I'm sure they can. But in my experience with grassroots players in America, probably have 9s and 10s beginning to sample it for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
So would you say then, Ian, that the adding on to my question, the terminology that you use becomes even more important with the younger ages? So it registers as they develop?
Yeah, I think this is, I know that's sort of a rhetorical question, Adrian, in as much as there's a thing right now where Pep Guardiola's kind of given credit for it. The language that's used in the academy is the same language that's used with the reserve and the first team.
Same here.
So, the idea is the player comes in and he or she knows within that framework what a split pass means, right? Because you line 3 kids up, a split pass might mean something different, or breaking a line, or whatever that is. So I do like to come up with little private languages with my kids. And so, where it works with, for example, high school and college, if I've got some set plays down that we use every year in my college program, my sophomores know them pretty well, my juniors know them very well, my seniors have got them. So when my freshmen come in, I don't need to really introduce them to the concepts. Their teammates are dragging them through. And this is where not only do you need consistency in the messaging, you need consistency across the coaching base within the club or the age group of the club. And then obviously you need to have the ability to retain players. So I can make the case that you might be able to get a better athlete and a better technical player, but he or she is a year or 2 behind in the methodologies of the club, the ethos of the club, and you're better off keeping the kids you've got and not always trying to improve the talent pool if the talent pool isn't ready to be integrated in, right? And you see this at the elite levels where you get players that come from foreign countries into the EPL and they're not ready for the qualities of the English football. So they're the best player in Portugal, but they can't make the adjustment. And I think this is where sometimes the work and time you've put into some kids, you might want to honor it a bit more and give them a bit more loyalty sometimes as well.
Great stuff, Ian. I think, again, for the audience tuning in, another couple of great examples of how just slight manipulation of the environment, such as the shape of the grid or the numbers, just completely shifts the demands on the players. So I think that's another good example there. I think the next exercise is more of a positional rondo. So before we move on to, before we move on to that one, I just had one question. I think the anti-rondo crowd or whatever, they might.
You are loving opening up these can of worms today, Ross.
This is
you
why
are fishing, big man. You are fishing.
I'm a big Rondo fan, so it's actually more just to get the conversation.
That's because you don't have to run far.
Yeah, exactly. My question would be, without it being, truly directional, do you not still think there's a very strong argument that could be made that these types of situations, the 2 examples you've got on the screen right now, those types of situations occur over and over and over again in a real game, and maybe in actual fact the game in some ways is almost just a series of rondos?
Yeah, I think the ultimate translation of a rondo is to the big game, right? So when we watch, what was the game? Well, obviously City Liverpool yesterday, that was the game on television, right? And then it was Getafe Real Madrid. When you watch the screen, you're not watching 22 players. You're actually watching 2 or 3 in some rondo.
Yeah.
But obviously at that level, it's intelligently connected to the next rondo and the next rondo, and then there's a goal. What I would say here, though, and this is where I take some issue with some of the philosophies, if this was 10 grassroots players at a club like VSA in Iowa, if you came out and set up a 5v5 and let it go, they'd probably be quite happy. It wouldn't probably have a ton of energy for very long because it's the beginning of training, and you got one ball shared between 10, and you aren't going to get some of the frequency of required movement and technical touches. So if I want to have a really good spicy 5v5, I might wait 15, 20 minutes but let them get in some of this repetition. Yeah. So I don't think the argument, these don't look like the real game. This looks a lot like the real game. Just because it doesn't have 2 goals and 2 equal number teams and a referee and linesman and 2,000 fans doesn't mean that this doesn't have translation to the real game.
Yeah. And Ian, you even see teams doing this type of stuff at the highest level pre-game warm-up, pretty much.
Right. Yeah. I got one quick question, and I do want to move on to the next one. How often do you use these types of activities in defensive training sessions, so sessions where you're focusing more on the defensive side?
I think it's less of the case because you're flipping the players over a lot. So you're really using this mainly for physical activation, cognitive activation, and just technical touches. But certainly, if you decide in a functional aspect, right, that you've broken off your back 4 defenders and you've given them to an assistant coach, then the 2 in the middle are always in the middle, and they have incentives for winning the ball and points and things like that, because you don't want, let's see, who can I think of? Well, I have to use English examples, right? Harry Kane being your lone defender for 20 minutes in a training session isn't much use. You want him shooting a goal, but you definitely want your centre backs and your full backs. So it absolutely has a functional use. These would probably be not be my primary activities for functional use. If I really want to do something entry level in terms of the progressive session, I'd probably be doing more like 1v1s across a grid or something like that.
Okay. Yes, there you go.
Yeah. So this one, again, right now, it's not strictly directional north-south, but what I like about it is the incentive for the 3 blues, if they can win it, is now to get out by transitioning and scoring on one of the 4 goals. So the blues have a great incentive to win it. They can score a goal on any one of the 3, and then their 2 teammates can jump in and help them. Obviously, we can work, if we're looking at the reds as our primary focus and how they possess the ball and retain it, we want them to be successful. So we might start up with 1 blue and 4 sitting out, but you can obviously vary the degree of challenge and bleed the defenders in or out as you want to. And then the way I've oriented the 5 reds is I've got the kind of the bumper player in the middle and then the 4 bumpers around the outside. So I like that idea of playing through the center to play back. The nice thing about this, the key about this, and this is where this becomes a second activity in a like a college training, and possibly a third activity in like an under 12, under 10 training, is it has this element of transition, right? Which is like periodization, is like rondo, is one of these words that we throw out there, and we're just talking about when the ball turns over. So the 3 blues, when they win it now, they're not kicking it out of the grid or just stopping, they're actually trying to score. And the 5 reds, when they lose it, are trying to prevent immediate penetration by the blues to one of the 4 goals. So this ebb and flow, and I can actually encourage the 3. Why are the 3 defending? They're not really defending as much as they're working to get the ball back. And absolutely the same with the 5. You've got possession, you're connecting passes, you're trying to play through the central player. But when you lose it, if you want to stay as the 5, don't let them score the goal. So I think this is sort of now this new energy in some of the top levels. Sporting Kansas City does this, as well as Man City and Liverpool, different levels, is we lose it, we get it back as quickly as we can. So this is a nice training for that as well.
Yeah, I like this activity because of that. And as far as I think it's coaching more in a grassroots level, and having the 5 players, I could bring out a bit more, functional stuff within this activity. Sometimes it's easier for the players to kind of then grasp those concepts. So I liked it.
Yeah, Ian, we have already touched on it very, very briefly, but I think now you start maybe bringing in positional positions in this. I have done a similar activity, but instead of having the four smaller goals, it was two bigger goals, and you put goalkeepers in. So when the three win it, they can go to the goal, but it's also then the keepers are being used, including keep away. Because as you mentioned there now, and we'll use Man City, who probably has the best outfield goalkeeper in the world, right? So again, you want to share your thoughts on including keepers in Rondos? So
Yeah, so absolutely. I actually did the session at convention this year. I did that activity. So basically, to what Adrian's saying is, let's say this goal and this goal, they're big goals, slightly bigger area with goalies in. The goalies can be part of the possession group, right? So they're part of the red team. So the two goalies and the five are possessing around the grid. So the goalie's working with his or her feet, angles of support, letting it come across their body. At the point where the Blues win it, they can turn and shoot on either goalie. So the goalie's now got transition reaction. There's a few English goalkeepers or guys in the Premier League that keep giving the ball to the attackers anyway. So that's good realistic practice. But yeah, absolutely incorporate goalkeepers and big goals. Obviously change the location of the four goals, or don't even use the four goals. Put the two blue defenders around the grid and they can move. And now when the three win it, they got to get their head up and find the exit pass to their teammates who can be moving in support to get out. So if you add the big goals and the goalies and you make it kind of like a 7v3 and then the three trying to score, that's probably the third training activity. But yeah, there are tons and tons of adaptation for sure.
Are there any, I mean, I can think of a few just off the top of my head, but just I want to hear your thoughts on some different types of individual topics that you could bring out from an activity like this. So if I were running a session on building out of the back, like how might I be able to use this activity and be able to bring out those concepts?
I think you start to identify functionality, right? So depending on the shape of the area and the positioning of the players, you could say maybe this kid I've got the mouse hovering over is the number 9. So typically every ball starts at this end and you're trying to work it off this end of the grid. So now this is your number 9. This might be your 3, your 2. This is probably your number 10 or your number 8. Maybe this is a flank player. But every time you start it, you go from one end to the other. If you go back and forth, and I've got no problem with that, if this guy was your 3, when you go if you go up the grid, now he becomes your number 7, right? So that can be a little bit schizophrenic for kids. And if you're at the highest level where Adrian's kids are, they're being groomed to be a number 7. So having them suddenly play left back makes no sense at all. But in a grassroots level, that might be good to identify the function of that role. And you would just do that by specifying. And of course, this is, I think we all agree this is a tough position to play because you got your back to a couple of your teammates a lot of the time. You've got 360. That's why I was a good centre back, because I could just hug one end of the park. Or you're a good flank player because you've only got half the field to worry about. So anytime you can now tie it into realism, Damien, and function, I think is valuable time.
So it's a tough position to play in, but we want every player to have still the qualities to be able to go and play in there.
Well, yeah. So centre backs now at the highest level, they're the ones picking the balls up from the goalkeepers, right? And the fullback on. So if a centre back can't let the ball run across his body, or your number 6, your defensive destroying holding midfielder, if at the highest level, if he can't turn and be the transition quarterback of your team, it's not good enough. So, you guys know that. But Pirlo, when his legs went, they moved him from number 10 to number 6 because he didn't need to run so much, but you needed somebody with his intelligence to get the team going. So young players, I think most of us would agree, probably 12 and under, they're playing every position to the best of their ability, maybe not goalie. You're looking for left-footed players, and I think you're looking for players that naturally look before they receive the ball. You can train it, and you can hammer it, and you'll be successful if you work on it. But any kid that's already got his head on a swivel or her head on a swivel is a special player, and you probably pick up on them quickly if you can.
Where are you using this activity? Is this more a second for you? I think.
Yeah, I would, in a grassroots training session, I make this my second activity because I've got some goals, as it were. I've definitely got opposition, I've got boundaries. So this for me ticks all the boxes of a second activity, whereas the three previous ones I would be first. So, and these were not designed as progressive sessions. So there's sort of three first activities and with variation, and then I think this fits nicely into the second activity in my lesson plan.
What was your next activity?
This is one you'll want to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah, for me, I got a couple.
Oh, Davo, more than a couple. He spent on this one yesterday.
I don't know. I'll let you go because you might answer the question and then I don't need to ask it.
Well, all I can recommend to the people on the sesh is go Google it. Go Google this activity and whether it's 4+3 versus 4. Google Guardiola Rondo, Google Bayern Munich Rondo. And then there's an American college coach who did a whole series on pretty much this activity. I think to my knowledge, this is really a Spanish inspired type training session. And I actually saw it, I'll name drop, I saw it done by the Spanish Football Association at St. George's in England. Roy Hodgson did a very bread and butter English session, and then the Spanish came out and did this, so it's quite interesting. But
basically what you're saying is Roy Hodgson did not play the ball to the person in the middle and skipped it from one target to the next target, Ian.
It was very direct 4-4-2, yeah.
I will say, Ian, I do love this activity. Okay. My question was, it's just a management thing. So it's 4v3 versus 4. Like, why not have the activity be 4v4, v4, and allow all three teams to transition? Like, what was the specific nature of having the 3 and not rotating those teams? So having that team stay and not doing a 3-way transition.
Well, I believe on episode 4 you have Guardiola, so he can answer from his perspective, and then people will definitely tune in. I honestly, I just took the activity the way I had first seen it presented. I could make the case that you could have the 2 reds in the middle, so to your point, 4v4, and then you're looking really at the balance and depth and the relationship of those 2 is the primary focus of the training session. However, the argument here is that the 3 reds represent the spine of your team. So this now becomes, for guys like Guardiola, it's highly functional. So this is a deep lying player. That is obviously your 9, and that is your 10, your connecting player. Then all the blues and all the whites are essentially periphery players on the field.
Yeah.
So if you made it a straight interchange of the 3 teams, you wouldn't always get the right players in the right spaces for the functionality of it. However, Damien, absolutely. 3 teams of 4 possession, right? We've all played 8, like 4 blues, 4 reds, keeping it away from 4 yellows, and then you mix up, no problem at all. But this one
I'm also just looking at it just from like a true environment situation. If I'm coaching one of my 11 or 12 teams, I probably have 12 kids, and I'm just going to use the 12 kid. Like, I mean,
if you have the 12 kids, but you like the training, the red team never changes. Because the red players represent the spine of your team. So the training is for the blues and whites in and out of possession, but the real, you don't want to switch out. It would be a little bit like, bad example, but if you had your goalie in this training session, right, he or she could be one of the end players, but you'd never put him in the middle. That would make no sense.
Right.
So these kids around the outside, the blues, they're meant to represent your 2, your 3, your 7, and your 11.
Right.
Because they tend to play outside of the center. And absolutely, if you had 12 kids, it'd be really interesting to work on the push and pull of the two reds in the middle. when I first saw this, my objection was, okay, I get that's my number 5 down here with the ball, but now he becomes my number 9. And I've never really had a satisfactory answer about it. But basically, we're looking up and down the field as the 5 and 9. Obviously, the kid in the middle is the 360. This kid is now essentially a left winger. And when the ball gets to this red player, he becomes a right back. But the bottom line is they're on a sideline connecting passes back and forth. So I think I'm okay with it.
I can see where you think he's a 9, but I can also see where he's not, because if that's a 6 or an 8, they're still going to pass back to a 4 or a 5. You know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
They've still got to change their angles, and this is, I mean, this for me is the perfect functional rondo.
Yeah.
You know, especially for us trying to train that key player, whether that's the 6 or the 10. So the centre midfielder players, those players which obviously the 10 has always been a $50+ million player. The 6 is now 50 million plus. But we're always, that this is the perfect functional rondo for trying to train those kids.
And why I like this activity so much, even though I got hung up on the numbers, but why I do a lot of this stuff within my training is I coach a lot of younger ages, and so I'm not necessarily as hung up on, well, you're transitioning from being a 9 to a 4 or a 5, because at the younger ages I'm still rotating players in and out of positions quite frequently to try to figure out what's going on. So for me, that actually is great because I get to train players in different functional situations within one activity. So,
but I could also agree with you on that, Damo, as well, because it could depend on your formation. Like we probably all grew up on this, on all of us that are on this call here right now, not maybe the guys listening, but probably grew up playing 4-4-2, where we had 2 midfielders that, just like Ian said, kind of went on the seesaw. One goes high type of thing. So I mean, it's adaptation of what you could do. It's a choice. It could depend on your formation, but I think this is the perfect functional rondo that's out there. So I think but I like it because I think it can be done with the younger ones. It can be done with the older ones too. So.
You could, I mean, if you got a goalie and a goal, put it behind this kid at the top here. Start the ball every time at the bottom, and if you can get it to this guy at the top of the grid, he can just turn and get a shot, right? So it's just a little, you incorporate the keeper. You could actually adapt this for social distancing or physical distancing by making it a little exclusion zone in the middle for the central guy, and then locking the 4 whites into a quadrant. And so you could maybe make some adaptations. And this is there's many things about this, right? So can the red player hold possession, draw the whites in, and then find space? But this notion of breaking lines. So the first pass breaks the line of the 2 whites. We don't want this kid to turn into trouble, so he relocates it, and then we break the line again into the target. Or maybe the guy in possession can hit the top left. That's a great diagonal pass. He doesn't need to use the support left and right. He can play penetrating passes diagonally or vertically. So the implications for this at a very high level of MLS academy players and or grassroots players with Damon just using it as a technical possession activity. Lots of good stuff with this. But I recommend anybody go Google the YouTube videos. Fantastic.
I think it's amazing, Harry, and I'm not going to ask you to tell us how many years you've been coaching, but you've said the word a couple of times now that we have had to adapt as coaches to talk about social distancing because of the way the world is right now. And I believe if we've still got time, Damo, I'm hoping we have to. You've actually shown a couple of sessions or created some that might help for social distancing. If you guys have any more questions about this one, so
we'll get on to the next one and hopefully spend a little extra time in the other one. So
go.
So all this is the last one. So this would be right before your final scrimmage. In this particular case, I just showed it going one way, but if you've got both your goalies, you could easily show it going both ways. So the idea is that it's a scrimmage, but every time you begin, the coach plays a ball into, in this case, the center circle, and you have a rondo set up. So you put your central midfielders in the middle there, you create a numerical imbalance if you want. And the idea is that every time basically it's like the kickoff. The kickoff starts with a keep away. In this case, hopefully the Reds are successful because we've got 5 of them, 6 of them around 3. So the Rondos, the whole big thing there. They get their little Rondo off, they knock it into their 2 targets, and then they go and support. You get a quick attack at goal. You bring it back. You either set it up again for the Reds, or you set it up this time for the Whites to go the other way. And so you're taking that Rondo concept, you're putting it into a key area of the field. You're having a quick Rondo, quick burst at goal, come back. So that way, it's still part of the training session because it's not free play, but every one of these little sessions goes for maybe 20 seconds. You do 3 or 4, and then you come back and you review some of the success or failure. If the Whites, in this case, win it, they've got an outlet pass here, here, and here. And if you say 3 outlet passes, then you switch the other way. So you could go both ways, or you could go one way. But I really like that that ultimate incorporation of the Rondo into the trigger point for your attacking patterns.
Do you have any spacing for the 6v3? Like, are you going to cone that off? Is that?
Yeah, it's good. So very often when you're doing a convention and you've got no markings, it's just you make a cone rectangle, right?
Yeah.
I like the center circle. The center circle could be really easy for a lot of coaches just to put a 4v2 in there. I could have put cones around it because I'm actually showing a 6v3 there. But you just want to make it, if you could, with a high level group, you could just say to the 4 players on the outside of the circle, you've got to be just outside the circle. Kids probably are going to need more delineation, but yeah, the idea is you've got that tight, compact group. And clearly here, the 4 have got to find the feet of the 2 kids in the middle to trigger to go forward. I would not make too many. I wouldn't make it like 8 passes, 3 one time. You basically want to get it in, get it back, go. Get it in, get it back, go.
And that was
the 2 in the middle, they cannot play it forward?
I'm sorry?
The 2 in the center circle, they cannot play it forward. It has to be one from the 4 on the outside.
No, I'd love to have them play it forward. Maybe they play it forward but don't support it. So if this kid can turn and play it, then this one could be moving off the ball, right? So
of course, because that I think totally changes a lot of your coaching points on working with those 2 in there. Yeah.
Now, depending on the level of pressure in here, it could all be about play the way you're facing, right? So Guardiola might not want Fernandinho turning there. He might want him just dropping it, or David Silva turning, he might want him dropping it. So horses for courses, but if the Whites overplay it and this kid can turn, why would you deny that? I don't know why you'd deny that.
Okay.
That's restrictions on passing limit was a question, so that's good. That I think we like that there is no restriction on that.
You got to really think when you're using touch considerations and all of these convoluted ways and points and things like that, that you're just stymieing the creativity and freedom of the players.
Yeah.
One touch is great if you're under pressure. One touch is completely illogical if the opponent's dropped off. You might as well keep it and carry the ball. So, and I know we've all, as I'm older than you guys, but we've all been in those training sessions where the coach has made so many stupid rules and conditions. You're just like, I'm not learning it. It doesn't make sense. Why would I do that? To Adrian's point, when I could have just turned and scored. So be mindful that your conditions make sense and still empower the player to make choices.
Would you allow for players to dribble out of the grid? So like if this guy on the right-hand side were to get the ball and he's obviously got time and space in front of him, would you allow him to dribble out? Or do you want the ball played in?
Could be a possibility. So let's say I've got these 9 guys in a rectangle and I'm the coach and I play the ball in, I'm over here. So I've given it to this kid. I'm going to assume that the 3 Whites will gravitate to the grid. So we could incentivize this player with the squiggly line, incentivize staying away from the action and hope that you can get the switch of attack. And if you can do that, you can go. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say he's got to wait for 3 or 4 convoluted things. If it's too easy that they can just, if this kid with the ball now can just turn and dribble out, then the 3 Whites are going to turn around and look at you and say, what's the point? So you've got to make the right degree of challenge.
Yeah. Adrian, what did you had kind of an idea of how to incorporate 2 goals within this activity, or at least have some counter goals for the white team? Like, again, wondering what the transition would be. Obviously, I know we're looking to play to the 3 target players, but
yeah, I'm hoping eventually one day, Damo, that we're so good here on the Sesh that we'll have touchscreen for everybody and be able to draw everything up, So I'm hoping one day we can get there. But yeah, I mean, Ian, again, this is an idea, a thought, is that so it's an opportunity for both teams to attack, and again, including 2 keepers would be like it's a 4 versus 4 in the middle, and then maybe playing into a 1 versus 1 on each side, and keep it going for both teams,
Yeah. So all you would do then is basically turn the 2 kids in the middle into all time, right? So put them in a different color, and every time it starts in there, they're working with the team that has possession, and then the whites would ultimately build towards towards the bottom goal, and the red. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You talking about neutrals?
It was a 4 versus 4. Yeah.
No, I'm just messing around. It's just another.
No, I know, and it's funny. It's funny, Damo, because I mean, it's funny how as times have changed, and I think this is one of the great things is like why we all have adapted as coaches, because it used to be you didn't want a neutral, and neutrals wasn't in, and then it's more like, is it realistic to get the manipulation out of what you want to get out of the topic?
I think it's all whether or not. I mean, it might work well for your environment and might not work for someone else's. And so
exactly. And I think this is one of the. This has been great with these, because it's like we've all looked at these and gone, like you've gone with yours and said, "Oh, this is how I would do it with my U12 girls," and I'm looking, well, this is how I could do it with my U17 boys, and then Ross might be looking at it going, "Yeah, this is how I can do it with the ODP kids." And I think this is all this wonderful thing about Rondos. It's how you adapt it as a coach to fit into your environment of the players that you are working within. And I'm hoping people here that tuning into the Sesh here are looking at it that way. Is like, how can I make this fit my U14 girls team in Wisconsin or whoever we've got tuning in, so.
Yeah, and just to that end too, right? Let's say I take some of the reds and I drop them in to mark these white players on the cones, right? So basically, my whites are kind of like, for want of a better expression, Liverpool, right? There's a Firmino, there's a Salah and a Sane. So that's a front 3 attacking, and I put the right number of defenders in. At the other end, I've got 2 central forwards working together. So you could make a single striker, you can make paired strikers, triple strikers, different at each end on the basis of what system and formation you play. So you can heavily adapt these for your formation and system.
Ian, I've got one, before we move to the more social distancing exercise, I've got one more question. And it's been kind of answered through the dialogue. But I mean, you've talked a lot about the cognitive development that's taking place, not just in this exercise, but in all of them. Do you think, it's possible for a coach to go in and teach perception? So, for example, we're talking about, well, can the 2 in the center circle, can they turn and play forward? Well, yes, they can, like when it's on. Is it possible for a coach to go in and teach that player, when is it on, when is it not on? Or do you think that just occurs experientially, just through reps? I don't know if I articulated that very well, but.
No, I think that you can definitely set up, very straightforward little training sessions where I knock it into you, you've got no pressure. How quickly can you turn and get it knocked into Adrian at the other end, right? So there's nothing express about looking, ask him to look over the shoulder, but you're just repping. Then you put the defender in. Now there's a consequence. If I want to be good at it, I've got to do something a little different. I mean, I always think about if you don't want your little guys to kick the ball with their toe as high as they can, make the goal 1 foot high, and they will adjust because they know there's no point in kicking it 2 feet high. So I do think managed experiential for sure, but I also think intelligent questioning. So it was something on Twitter the other day. Maybe now I say to Adrian, what did you see then that made you decide to play it back? What did you see? And he says, well, I saw I had pressure. So now you understand he's anxious to pressure. I like to use the what did you see, what did you think, what was the idea, as opposed to why. Because as soon as you say why, they tend to think they've made an error, which maybe they haven't, right? Maybe. So I think asking them, and maybe they aren't sure what they saw, but you can help them with that. So I do think there's that sort of guided discovery, Socratic thing that can lead to it as well. And then of course you can use video, or you can pull the kid out and have him watch his teammates doing it and ask him what he's seeing as well, because he might see those options from the freedom of being with you that he or she can't see when they've got somebody up their back.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think that's great advice for the coaches tuning in. Love those terms: managed, experiential, and intelligent questioning. And then that idea of pulling the kid out and just having him observe and then ask the question. Then I don't know if I would have thought of doing that. That's a really nice little teaching strategy right there as well.
Yeah.
I think this is good. I think one of the hot topics, obviously, we talked a little bit at the beginning, right now, physical distancing, social distancing, and us getting, return to play. I think we're all kind of looking for ideas on what to do within our training sessions in the next month or two. So I know you do have some ideas for us that we could do some of these activities in a more distanced way.
Yeah.
You want to?
Yeah, real quick. You good with time, Damien?
Yeah, why don't we give it 10 minutes? I think this is a little bit of extra time. I think it's important we hit on it, and then we could wrap up after that.
Here's a couple I just shared yesterday with my colleague Ian Mulliner from Mass Youth Soccer. He's got about 25 to 30 full lesson plans on Mass Youth Soccer, which are designed, Massachusetts Youth Soccer, which are designed just for physical distancing. So if you've got coaches that want them, they're right there on Massachusetts Youth Soccer. But this is one
before you move on there, Ian, let's be honest as well. Most people want a social distance from Mully anyway, even before COVID as well. So
the 4v nobody around the cone on the left. The idea is you pass it. So here we're sharing the ball. So we're at the phase of return where they can use the same ball, but they can't be too close to each other. So all you're doing is you're jogging after you've played the pass, and then the girl or boy that receives it is trying to get it out and under and knocked on before the player gets there. So you're observing physical distancing, but you're working on passing and moving, receiving, opening up across your body, so on and so forth. You go around one way, you're left foot dominant. You go around the other way, you're right foot dominant. If it's on the bottom there in the notes, you can play it. She gives it back to you. You execute a give and go around the cone. So there's a nice little variation. Or you play it to her, she gives it back to you, and then you hit the third person across the grid. They drop it. This player at the bottom hits it across the grid. So kind of some fun little things, social distancing. You then simply drop one of them in the middle and you play the keep away game. So as long as the girls on the outside of the triangle give themselves some space, the blue can't go out to press them, and you're playing. And then the nice little adaptation was you keep the 4v3, but then you take the other group and you put them around the outside in a square. So now if the blue wins it in the middle, she gets it out to one of her 4 teammates. They're playing keep away 4 plus the one in the middle against the 3 whites. The whites have to stay inside the red cones. The 1 blue has to stay inside the yellow, and the 4 blues have to stay around the outside. So really nice standard activities we've been doing forever, but you just make some subtle adaptations and the kids won't even really notice. So I quite like that one. And then just real quick, this is a game I love to play. This is the regular game. So the idea is the white team has 3 target balls and cones, and you score by dislodging the target ball. That's it. You can dribble into it. You can pass into it. You can take a long shot like this guy, but if you miss, somebody's got to chase the ball. But some key elements to this: if you score, you probably set it back up again, because if you've only got 1 left, it becomes the defending tends to get pretty pragmatic. So try to keep all the 6 goals up, and then when one scored, you turn over. But like hockey, you can play behind the goal. So now when this kid is trying to pass at this target to score, this player, instead of watching it and admiring the pass, is better served to run in. And if it misses, he or she can just tap it back. So you're potentially helping players get length on the field off the ball. And obviously this is more of a passing accuracy game than a shooting game. You can make the blue line of cones the offside line. So you could start off with this white, he can go post up in here, but after a while he can't be there until the ball is played. So now you've got movement off the ball in relation to the pass. So I really like that game. Play that game with 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, play it with college players, no problem at all. So like the game, social distancing option is simply 4 quadrants. So now the target is fixed, but he can move, but he's got to stay in his or her area. The 4s are stuck in their half. So now the 2 reds here, they can't press the ball because you're not allowed to because of social distancing, but they can certainly block the passing channel to the target. So they've done that. He's passed around it. Now this guy can shoot at the target like a through pass. And this guy can move. He can move to collect it. And of course, the red, the white here and the red there, they're limited to 1 touch, because if they can control it and dribble, you can't stop them scoring. But if they've got a 1 touch, now it's like a central forward getting a ball driven at him or her, and they lay it off. So it's not as much fun as that, but it's a nice adaptation. And as soon as you get some lifting of social distancing, you've already got them trained into the game. So just a couple of ideas that I kind of liked.
Yeah, no, it's really good stuff. And I think, again, it's just important that people kind of see and get some ideas as we all kind of get ready to return to play. So, yeah, this was fantastic. I think that, this is about an hour and 10 minutes of you demonstrating why you are what you are and why everyone wants to learn from you constantly. So I'm so glad that we were able to get you on. I do want to give, before we just go through and finish up, I want to give Jack and John an opportunity to kind of jump on and kind of talk a bit about what's going on with CornFed. Don't know if either one of you guys want to jump in. John, maybe got your mic off on.
Yeah. Thanks, Damo. Thanks, Ian, again. Got some exciting stuff. We released a blog this week. It's called Breaking the Press, which is really good. We hope to have everyone on here at least contribute in some fashion at some point. So that's exciting stuff. We released an actual podcast episode last week with Troy McCarroll and Francisco Magria. I think I butchered that, but it's good. Jack's got to get Ian a shirt. I'll blame that on Jack. We're up to,
Shirt's on the way. Shirt's
on the way for sure. We're up to 42 episodes. We got an exciting one coming out next week. We'll hold back on releasing that name just because there's some approval that has to get done before that. So it should be a good one. And yeah, we've got some exciting stuff coming up. Again, thanks to everyone. This was fantastic. So keep it going.
Really good stuff. So I want to just, again, Ross, Adrian, thank you for coming on. There's a lot of prep work that goes into this between, the hour and some odd minutes today and then an hour of prep yesterday and just emailing back and forth over the course of the last couple of weeks to prepare for this. And I appreciate everything you guys have done to help get this going. Ian, again.
It's great. It's great, Damo. Appreciate Jack, John, Ian as well. As a mentor of mine, it's interesting to come on and kind of question you, but also learn from you. But it's how we all get better. So even as a mentor, you want your mentees to make us better as well. So it's great. So I appreciate Ian and everything that everybody that you all doing for the game. So.
Absolutely. It's just so much fun, this, isn't it? I love it. I just love it. So it's really, you don't need to thank me. It's an honor to be on the panel and have the opportunity. So I want to try to ask Ian the good questions because I know he has the answers and these responses are just gold for the audience. So yeah, like Adrian, you did.
I do want to know though, Ian, is that a Scrabble board behind you?
What's that, mate?
Yeah. Ian's looking at, he's playing Scrabble. He's been playing Scrabble.
So cheers, Damo and the CornFed guys for allowing me the privilege to be on here and learn alongside you guys.
All right. And Ian, thanks again for coming on and giving us your time. I know that you've been busy, and so I really do hope that you've enjoyed your time here with us today. And I know that you've been on Corn-Fed Coaching Podcast, and we'll hope to get you involved in some other things that the guys got going, and maybe future episodes of the Sesh. So I really do appreciate you.
Thank you for the invitation. To Ross, I enjoy this. I mean, it's what I like to do, right? It's talk about football, think about football with people. Before we go off the air, and maybe I lose all of you, there is the quick tactics, the first diagrams I had now, they have the ability, if the 5 of you all had a license, about $100 a year, you could share the screen and build the training session as the group and manipulate each other's players on the Sesh. So you might, the gentleman's from Grimsby in England, he'll give you a tutorial, and the 5 of you could actually, with your presenter, completely manipulate the screen if you want to. So bear that in mind.
That's the money. That's what we're looking for. We'll have to connect on that.
Yeah.
And get that. That could be a game changer for
us. Very affordable. And you can share your the 6 of you could come into my library and vice versa. So you'd already have a stuffed library of content to mess about with too.
All right. Well, Ian, I will connect with you after this just to debrief and maybe get that information. And who knows, maybe bring you on the panel one day when we get someone else and give you an opportunity to kind of, ask some questions and do that. So I will leave it at that. Thank you, everyone, for coming on. Thank you, everyone who's been watching on the live stream. And for anyone going to watch on the rewind, we will get this up as soon as possible. All right. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
Thanks, guys.
Great. Happy 4th of July.
Thanks, guys.